What's going on, Raiders? Doolum here, and today we're going to be talking about the SHADOWKIN faction, the best epics, the best legendaries, and if you've gotten lucky from pulling a shard, and who is going to be super useful in those all-dreaded faction wars. So if you're ready, let's get into it. But first, make sure you're clicking that download link or scanning the QR code to get Karato Fox Hunter. The second you start the game, an amazing legendary nuker. At level 10, you're going to be getting Tagore, an amazing epic support character. At level 20, you're going to be getting Fane, who's got some incredible turn meter steal, as well as some pretty crazy damage. And then at level 30, you're going to be getting Vergus, who's a defense-based champion, to help keep your other characters alive. And then this is super important. Day number 1 within the first 24 hours of making your Raid Shadow Legends account. Type in promo code Monkey King to get Sun Wukong, one of the best free legendaries they have ever given. And if you're on iOS, make sure you're clicking a different link in the description to type in any promo code. All right, going over to SHADOWKIN. We only got 2 left. We've been flying through this. This has been a lot of fun, actually. This is helping me learn a lot of kits and learn who's actually good and who's not, because I get to do a lot of research before these, so it's fun. All right, starting off with the epics. We're going to do a Boro, because I did pull her recently. From the progressive chance when they had like progressive chance for epics, and I was able to pull her. She's not bad. She's nothing too crazy. The A1 spreading chaos attacks one enemy, has a booked up 50% chance of placing big version of decreased defense. Will attack all enemies instead if the target is under 4 or more debuffs. So a little bit of AoE there, decreased defense if they're under a lot of debuffs, which is pretty cool. Not bad at all. A2 Mystic Smoke, 4-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks one enemy 2 times. The second hit has a booked up 100% chance of transferring all debuffs from this champion to the target. That's really, really nice. The first hit has a booked up 100% chance of sealing all buffs from the target when under a Veil or Perfect Veil buff. Interesting how they talked about the second hit first, then the first hit. Pretty odd. I don't know why, but that's a really nice ability, especially if you can get that Veil or Perfect Veil. Really, really nice, and that does come from the A3. Ninja Arts, 5-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown, places an increased crit rate and increased crit damage buff on this champion for 2 turns. Then attacks one enemy, places a Perfect Veil buff on this champion for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown, as long as it's a critical, which it will be, right? Awesome. Very, very nice, actually. A 2-turn Perfect Veil on a 3-turn cooldown is really solid. Vanish places a Revive on Death buff on this champion for 3 turns whenever they receive a Veil or Perfect Veil buff. And remember, this is on a 3-turn cooldown here, so she's always going to have Revive up, which is awesome. Increase ally attack in dungeons by 33%. Very solid. You see, very good in Hydra, Faction Wars, Chimera, Demon Lord, Minotaurs, all that good stuff. So a very, very solid epic character. Obviously a void, but still very, very solid. Next up, we're going to talk about Genbo. I really like Genbo, actually. He's pretty solid. His ratings are also pretty solid as well, specifically Arena and Faction Wars. Outside of that, not the best, but still very solid. So the A1 Twin Soul Swords attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has each hit steals any increased attack buffs. Each hit also has a booked up 50% chance of stealing 1 random buff. The increased attack buff steal cannot be resisted. Very, very cool. A2 Heartless Blitz, 4-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, has an 80% chance of decreasing the duration of all buffs by 1 turn. This effect cannot be resisted on critical hits. Very, very nice there. Really, 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 really nice effect there. Decreasing the duration of all buffs on an AoE 100%, and it cannot be resisted as long as it's a crit, is extremely solid. Sword Trance, the 6-turn cooldown, booked down to a 4-turn cooldown, places a 30% increased crit rate and a 30% increased crit damage buff on this champion for 3 turns, then grants an extra turn. Very, very solid. Flinty, immune to decreased attack debuffs and will ignore unkillable buffs when attacking under an increased attack buff. The Aura as well, ally speed in Arena by 20%. Very, very solid. Very good character, especially for Arena. Very good epic character. A lot of damage too, as well. All right, who are we gonna go for next? Where are we looking? Where are we looking? Where are we looking? Let's skip up to the top row here. Let's talk about Fenshi, because Fenshi's not bad at all. Fenshi's not too shabby. If you pull Fenshi, not the best, but still pretty decent. 4.4 in Faction Wars. So let's talk about it. A1 Hate Blaze attacks one enemy 3 times. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a 30% decrease defense debuff, or decreased speed debuff for 2 turns that is booked up to a 40% chance on a triple hitter is very solid for things like Fire Knight. That's awesome, or just in general, you decreased speed is one of the best abilities, one of the best negative effects debuffs in the game. So having that on an A1 at a 40% chance on a triple hitter is really solid. The A2, Nowhere to Run, 4-turn cooldown, booked down to a 2-turn cooldown, a rare 2-turn cooldown. Attacks 1 enemy 3 times, another triple hitter. Each hit has a booked up 75% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15%. So again, 75% chance for a turn meter, kind of like Newt with the freeze on the A1, and it acts as a turn meter rewind in Fire Knight Hard, obviously. This is really, really solid here. And then the A3, Killers, Bile, 4-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown, attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit as it places a poison debuff on the target for 3 turns. Very, very solid there. Will ignore 10% of the target's defense for each poison debuff on the target. So a very hard hitter there, especially being able to ignore the target's defense. And it does not seem like this is capped either, which is very interesting. So that could be pretty strong. Again, Fire Knights, Demon Lord, Faction Wars, and then that's about it. He's decent in Iron Twins because you get that poison damage, but he does have an issue of doing too much damage and then pushing him below that health threshold, so he clears those poisons, but still a very solid choice. Next up, we're going to talk about, let's do Hitatsu. Hitatsu's great, defense-based character, also kind of looks like the Demogorgon from Stranger Things, just with a horn and some wings, but looks really, really cool. I love this character. Red River attacks 1 enemy, has a 40% chance of placing a leech debuff for 2 turns. That is booked up to a 60% chance. Very, very nice. Pretty similar to like Deacon, just on a single hitter instead of a double hitter, or even Ugo, who is the single hitter as well. Rushing Death, 4-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies, has a booked up 80% chance of placing a big version of decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Very, very solid. 85% chance with Sniper, obviously. Decreased attack, very important. Oni Icon, 4-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown. Only 1 book needed as well. Places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, and a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 1 turn. Very, very solid. Spirit Touched, 3-turn cooldown, removes 1 random debuff from this champion at the start of each turn. Will remove Stun, Sleep, Freeze, Fear, True Fear, Provoke, Petrification debuffs before other debuffs. So very, very nice on a 3-turn cooldown. Nothing wrong with that. That's decently solid. And then increase ally defense in all battles by 25%. So you see Demon Lord, Faction Wars, and then that's pretty much it. He's kind of meh everywhere else, but he's a pretty solid character. I do enjoy him. And then last up for the epics, we're going to talk about Taragi. Taragi's one of the better epics in this section. I'd say Taragi's actually probably the best. Maybe between Taragi, Oboro, and Genbo are probably the most solid choices here. But Taragi's really, really solid. So the A1 attacks 1 enemy, has a 30% chance, booked up to a 40% chance of placing a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Very solid. He's based off of HP as well. Potent Stench, 4-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing Provoke debuff for 1 turn. The chance increases by 5% for each debuff on the enemy team, so that's pretty solid as well, 3-turn cooldown. Bog Blessing, 5-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown, places a shield buff equal to 15% of this champion's max HP, and a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Very, very solid. Also heals this champion by 25% of their max HP and places a 30% reflect damage buff on them for 3 turns. The heal increases by 2.5% for each poison debuff on the enemy team. This is a very, very solid A3 on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. This is awesome. Shield, ally protection, reflect damage for himself, and then a heal based off of poisons as well is so, so solid. Very, very good. Toxic Blood, when attacked, has a 50% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. Occurs once per hit. That is also very, very nice. And then increase ally resistance by 40 in battles. So you see Demon Lord, Faction Wars, Dragon's Lair. Outside of that, he's okay in Hydra, nothing crazy. But where he does shine is that Faction Wars and Demon Lord, especially for this healing here and the shields. Very, very nice. If you make him super tanky, that reflect damage as well is going to be super, super important. And then also having that ally protection is going to keep him alive. He is very, very tanky in Faction Wars. All right, let's go up to the legendaries, and we'll talk about him because why not? He's part of the collab right now with Viacom for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I do think he is probably the worst out of the 6, but with that being said, The 6 characters of the crossover are kind of nuts. Like, all of them are very good. Like, even April is a little lackluster, except for PvP. I think once people really figure out how good she is, she's going to be very, very strong and very useful, especially with the Nullify debuff that she brought to the game. So let's talk about Shredder. A1 Rage of Saki attacks one enemy 3 times. His damage is based off of HP as well. The second and third hits of this skill will ignore 5 and 10% of the target's defense respectively. The second and third hits of this skill will deal 10% and 20% more crit damage respectively. A2 Shadow Shinobi, 4-turn cooldown, book down to a 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies 2 times. Each critical hit destroys the enemy's defense by 5%, stacks up to 30%. Each critical hit also increases this champion's max HP by 5%, stacks up to 30%. So the longer battles, the more damage he's going to be doing. And then each hit has a booked up 100% chance of placing a leech debuff for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown is awesome. This debuff cannot be resisted if this champion is under Veil or a Perfect Veil buff. And then the A3 is where we get that Veil and Perfect Veil. 6-turn cooldown, book down to a 4-turn cooldown. This is true ninjutsu. Attacks all enemies before attacking, steals all buffs from a single target enemy. This effect cannot be resisted if this champion is under a Veil or Perfect Veil. Very, very good. It does steal all buffs from a single target enemy. That is very, very good. Fills his champion's turn meter by 15% for each buff stolen, so very strong turn meter as well. Will ignore 15% of each enemy's defense as well as shield and block damage buffs. This champion is under Veil or Perfect Veil will ignore 30% of each enemy's defense instead. That is a very strong AoE ability on a 4-turn cooldown. Very, very solid. Dimensional Tyrant, 1-turn cooldown passive effect decreases all damage by 30%. This damage is split equally among all allies except this champion. This is akin to Farrakhan the Fat as well. I think he does it by 20% instead. Increases his champion's damage dealt by 15% for each dead ally. And he's the lone survivor, maybe in like Arena, because he's an HP-based nuker, he can survive. He does get that extra 45% damage, so very, very cool. Active effect, whenever this champion loses 20% of their max HP in one attack, has a 100% chance to evade the next attack. When this guaranteed evade activates, places a Perfect Veil buff on this champion for 2 turns, and has a 50% chance of placing a True Fear debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. That is nuts, and the True Fear debuff cannot be resisted as well. That is so insane. That is really, really good. Amazing controlling effects. Very, very strong. And then increase ally HP in battles by 33%. Now, the reviews on him are not that great. And I think it's because the reviews that are here are going to be from either people that got extremely lucky and potentially don't know the potential of Shredder, or these are content creators who are extreme late game and they just haven't found good uses for him extreme late game. But I think he's going to surprise some people once a lot more people get their hands on him and can really build him out very well. Obviously, HP based is going to be interesting. Next up, the best of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle collab. That's right, Leonardo. This guy is absolutely redonkulous. And when I say redonkulous, I mean the best of the collab that they are doing. And it's not even close. Every time I see somebody pull him in my clan, one person pulled him and I told him to step on a Lego. And then I said, well, yay. Man, I'm jealous. I think Boomer pulled him too, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that's great. New York Slice. Attacks one enemy 2 times when counterattacking. Will repeat this attack against a random enemy. Really, really nice. Will ignore 3% of the target's defense for each buff on this champion. And there will be a lot of buffs on this champion. Let me tell you, if you're running with the turtles. Shell, yeah, 5-turn cooldown, book down to a 3-turn cooldown. Amazing as well. Only takes 2 books to get the cooldowns down. Only 3 books for the A1 as well. Places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, and a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Also places unkillable buff and a counterattack buff on this champion for 2 turns. Very, very, very solid. Turtles together, 4-turn cooldown, book down to I got a scroll, 3-turn cooldown, and this is going to be the Unity ability here as well, which is really, really nice. So attacks all enemies. The damage inflicted by this skill increases by 5%. For each buff on all allies and enemies. And there is no cap on this. And there's going to be so many buffs on each side, especially your side, especially once you use the A3 from Donatello, getting that strengthen, getting the increase, what is it? The strengthen, I can't remember what else he gives. Oh, Lord, I'm blanking. And then he gets the increased speed on the A2 as well. There's going to be a lot of buffs on this character. Removes all buffs from all enemies if this attack kills an enemy. This effect cannot be resisted. So if you get a kill, you're also taking off all of the buffs from all enemies as well. So the damage is based on defense. He is a defense-based damage dealer as well. I don't know if we talked about that. Now, the TMNT Unity, Turtle Ally will ignore 15% of the target's defense per each Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, Raphael on the team. Does not count this champion. So if you do have 2 Leonardos for whatever reason, you can get this up to 60%, but this will probably be 45%, which is still extremely, extremely solid. 2 Turtle Allies increase the damage dealt by this skill in proportion to this champion's missing HP, which again, remember, he's going to have the unkillable buff on the A2. So if you do that A2 first, then there's going to be a potential that he's going to be extremely low, and then he's going to absolutely delete people with the A3. 3 Turtle Allies activates the skill whenever an ally's HP drops below 50%. Occurs once per skill. If there are multiple champions in this team with a skill, only one will activate. Activates this skill whenever an ally's HP drops below 50%. And there is so much healing on this team when you have the 4 turtles with Donatello counterattacking with the A1, getting those heals out there, also with the A3 with the heal. There is so much healing that goes out here that this is going to go off so many times. And it doesn't say that it puts the ability on cooldown as well. So I'm wondering if it doesn't put it on cooldown, because if it doesn't, that's going to be absolutely busted, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And then we do have the passive. No books needed in the passive, which is pretty great. Hero in a half shell places a stone skin buff on this champion for 1 turn each time this champion drops below 50%. Occurs once per skill. Whenever any of the 4 turtles attacks, this champion will join in on the attack. That's right. Every time. There's no conditional to this. Just drops below 50% life, then it gets buffed up to a 50%, then below, then above. He's going to have stone skin on him over and over and over and over again. Increase ally defense in all battles by 33%. This guy is disgustingly, disgustingly good. He's literally got a 4.9 absolutely everywhere. I would say I give him a 5 in a lot of these sections like Faction Wars, Arena Offense, Arena Defense, Hydra, Demon Lord. This guy is absolutely disgusting. Probably one of the best legendaries they've brought to the game in quite a while. And I really, really hope by the time you're seeing this, I have him. But only time will tell. Next up, we're going to talk about Shu-Yen. Shu-Zen. Wow, Shu-Yen. Shu-Zen, very, very good. She's got an increased ally speed in arena battles by 30%. Spear of Providence, level 1. Attacks 1 enemy, has a 30% chance, booked up to a 50% chance placing block active skills debuff for 2 turns. Also has a booked up 100% chance to seal 20% of the target's turn meter if this target is already under a block active skills. Very, very nice. A2, Purging Petals, 5-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown. Target an ally. If the ally is not under a sheep debuff, places a 50% increased attack and a 30% increased crit rate and a 30% increased crit damage buff on them for 2 turns. Then activates instant turn effect on the target ally. That is nuts. If the target is under a sheep debuff, then remove it on a 3-turn cooldown. That's really solid. Then we have a Charge of Valorous, 6-turn cooldown, booked down to a 4-turn cooldown. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 20% and places a 30% increased speed buff on them for 2 turns. Also has a 30% chance of decreasing the turn meter of all allies by 20% and placing a decreased speed debuff on them for 2 turns. Absolutely nuts there. Passive Sovereign Sight, increases the champion accuracy to the amount of speed that they have, which is absolutely great. So you could just build pure speed and you'll get accuracy built in, which makes her very easy to build. Arena Offense, Arena Defense, Faction Wars, great for controlling. Very, very solid character. Very, very good. Now, let's move up a little bit here. Ishiyama, I did not like very much. Corrado, very good as well. Somebody who I offer as my free legendary for my download link. Very good. We're going to talk about 2 more here. Sorry, Mishinaki and Ninja. I've talked about you a bunch, Mishinaki, when you've been in Prism Shards, and Ninja, nobody can get him, so I don't really see much of a point of talking about him. He only came back once in 2024 after his initial collab in 2021. But let's talk about Tetsuya, and then we'll talk about Harima. So Tetsuya, the Deliverer, absolutely insane as well. Part of the Prism Shard pool that just happened rather recently with the Leonardo as well. So Rapid Laceration. Attacks 1 enemy, fills the turn meter of all allies by 10% if this attack is critical. Very, very solid there. A2, Preternatural Tactician, 4-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks 1 enemy 2 times, will place 2 extra hits if the target's turn meter is less than 50%. Very, very solid. Will ignore a percentage of the target's defense that is equal to the target's turn meter. Very, very good there. Resets the cooldown of the skill if the target is killed. A3, Decisive Presence, 5-turn cooldown, booked down to a 4-turn cooldown. We got a Unity as well. Attacks 1 enemy, steals 100% of the target's turn meter, and places a True Fear debuff for 2 turns. That is nutty. Really, really good. The turn meter steal effect and the True Fear Debuff cannot be resisted or blocked in the faction unity. 2 faction allies, increases the damage inflicted by this skill based on the difference between this champion's speed and the target's speed. Very, very nice. And then 3 faction allies will also attack all other enemies with more than 50% turn meter, steals 100% of the target's current turn meter, and places a true fear debuff on them for 2 turns. That is really, really solid. We've got the passive as well, Scourge of Mikage. Fills the champion's turn meter by 15% whenever an enemy champion takes a turn. There are multiple champions on this team. With this skill, only one will activate. This is also nuts. He goes so strong. Now, 1 faction ally. Turn meter increase effects used on allies are 20% more effective. Turn meter increase effects used on enemies are 20% less effective. There are multiple champions. It'll only activate 1. 2 of them, whenever this champion has their turn meter filled, increases the damage of their next attack by 5%, resets after a skill is used. And then 3 of them, all allies are immune to turn meter reduction effects from enemies. Absolutely disgustingly good. We also have increased ally speed in all battles by 19% and increases ally crit rate in battles by 15%. That is absolutely nuts. That only applies to Shadowkin, but still, that is amazing for Faction Wars. Literally, I don't know why this is not a 5.0 in Faction Wars. I think that is low, honestly. That is criminally low. But you see pretty good in Hydra as well. Not the best in Chimera, I'm assuming. There's no Chimera. There's 4.5 on Chimera. So pretty solid there. And then Harima, defense-based character. Very strong as well. Debasement. Attacks 1 enemy, has a booked up 75% chance of placing big version of decrease attack. Also has a booked up 50% chance of placing a big version of decrease attack debuff on all of the enemies for 2 turns if this attack is critical. Purgative Punishment, 4-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks 1 enemy 3 times. Each hit also decreases the target's defense by 5%, stacks up to 30%. Each hit also increases the champion's defense by 5%, stacks up to 100%. Instantly activates Celestial Awe if this skill kills an enemy. Celestial Awe, 4-turn cooldown, booked down to a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies, places a provoke debuff for 1 turn. This debuff cannot be blocked or resisted if the target champion is from the Demon Spawn faction. Pretty solid there. A little conditional though. Demon Slayer, ignore enemy defense effects. Enemy ignore defense effects are decreased by 50%, which is really solid. Champions from the Demon Spawn faction cannot inflict critical hits on this champion. This champion cannot land weak hits on champions from the Demon Spawn faction, and we increase ally resistance in arena battles by 80. You see how good Harima is. 4.9, 4.95, 4.9, 4.9. Literally amazing everywhere, pretty much except for Fire Knights and Spiders, but even then, still very useful. Harima, one of the best in the faction. So that's going to be it for Shadowkin. This one has some really solid choices. There are some really bad choices too, but if you get the good ones, like unlike Gamaran here, I did pull Gamaran and I'm like, wow, he's not good at all. But yeah, if you get some really good options here, you can really get through Faction Wars very quickly, especially if you get Leonardo, Shredder, Tetsuya, Harima, any of those, or Shuzen for Arena as well. Very solid. So, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hope you guys are clicking that download link and having a blast with Raid Shadows Legends like I am. Make sure you are doing it. And 3 epic characters, 3 legendaries just because of my download link. And we also have Michelangelo still for free until October 30th. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Until next time, this has been Duelim. Later, Raiders.